Welcome, folks. This is Recast, the video podcast where we tend to break down the issues, put them back together in a form that more resembles reality, we hope. And I am talking with a guy today who is just beyond his high profile in the NFL. Some of you are already recognizing Demario Davis, linebacker for the Saints. He's a super guy and a little bit different profile than what we've had on in the past, but let me tell you about why he's here and what we're going to be doing. As some of you know, aside from my work at bruceleesmith.com, which is my writing and speaking and teaching platform, I'm also associated with something called wealthcurated.com. It's my business of 25 years where I deal in high value, rare objects. And the reason that is appropriate to bring up, number one, it's sponsoring the show, wealthcurated.com. But number two, I'm convinced that we are drawn to two things in life that make us function more deeply on a human basis. One is this whole idea of rarity and value. The reason, aside from my writing, that I do what I do is because beauty draws the heart. And Demario Davis is a guy you will see beyond his physical appearance, which, by the way, Demario, the first time that we met you and you were speaking, after that engagement, my wife, who is an artist, by the way, very visually oriented, she said, he's an amazing guy, but he's just beautiful to look at as well. So Demario will capture your attention with the optics. Of course, this is a dueling beard contest as well. Some of you have already figured out I have the better beard. But Demario is going to capture you as well by his authenticity. It's rare to find a guy high profile like him. In a career and a platform that is just driven by optics and image craft. To find a guy with depth and authenticity is rare, and Demario is one of those rare guys. So Demario, welcome to Recast. Thank you. I know you're a busy guy. I appreciate your time.
No, man. Thank you for having me on, man. Thank you.
Well, look, let's jump in. This is about you and your story, and it's about some of the things that you are doing. So why don't we jump in and tell us a little bit about who was Demario as a young man? How did Demario get to be the guy that he is today? I know that's a broad road, but tell us who you were early on and how you came to be who you are doing some of the things you're doing.
Well, I'm a Mississippi kid. I was born in a small town, Collins, Mississippi. My mom was the youngest of 10 kids. Big family. My mom had me at a young age. I stayed with my grandmother early on. Just grew up running around with my cousins, playing sports in the yard and things like that. My grandmother was a very religious woman, so she taught me all the right things to do, and grew up in the church. After my mom finished college, I ended up going back to live with her, and we lived in Louisiana for a little bit, and then moved back to Mississippi in third grade, and that's the first time I got introduced to sports. Started playing sports my first year. I scored like 45 touchdowns or something, and so I realized I pretty much had a little knack at that.
This might work.
My dad was in the military, so he was all over, and it was pretty much me and her for the most part. And so, I grew up pretty good kid, did decent in school, and was doing my thing on the field, and really didn't get in too much trouble. Just talked a lot in school. And right around like the 9th grade is when life started to kind of hit a little bit of turmoil. So I was hanging with my older cousins and stuff, and got introduced to a lot of stuff that it's just hard for the 9th grade mind to process. But I was introduced to drugs and alcohol and girls and gangs and all type of stuff. So my mind was just trying to process that. But anyways, my life started to spiral. I ended up getting expelled from school when I was a sophomore. Kind of had a little scared straight moment, got back on the right track. My sophomore to senior year, ended up getting a scholarship and then going to Arkansas State. Still a kid that was all over the place. Ended up going to jail my first year in college. Then I started spending time with my team chaplain, and he really just started to dive into like a one-on-one type of relationship with me, and just started to just ask me and challenge me with harder questions. He would challenge me with, questions like, are you a Christian? What do you think a Christian life looks like? What do you think sin is? If you would have died at scale 1 to 10, do you think you would go to heaven or hell? Just would challenge me with these type of questions that I really couldn't answer. Even though I had grown up in church my whole life. And then he just took me to the Bible and just said, let's see what God has to say about it. And during that process, there was a real heart change that ended up happening. The scales were removed from my eyes, and I realized why Jesus was sent into this world, and I realized my desperate need for him, and I realized how big the gap was between us and God, and only Jesus could fill that void. And all of a sudden, walking into this relationship, not only did I get to feel the richness of this relationship with God, but I got this burning desire to tell other people about him. And from there, my just began to transform in a lot of different ways. And as I said before, I was always a good student, and I had the, pretty good, talent on the field, but I was a person that was going to get in his own way. And this was me kind of getting out my own way, or God saving me from myself. And, kind of fast forward there, ended up meeting my wife on campus. We got married, got drafted in the same year, 2012, ended up in New York. And just life looked different at that point. From my transformation in college, football was no longer this road to self-glory. It was this opportunity and a platform to witness to people. And that's what I pretty much used the locker room for, first to reach the guys inside the locker room, but then to use that platform, notoriety from the field, to reach into the community and to reach back and reach young people as well. And that's kind of what our life has been on. My wife and I, we've now been married going on 10 years. We have 5 amazing children.
Beautiful kids too.
Yeah, thank you. Bailey Grace, Roman Parker, Summer Joy, Carly Faith, and Stormy Love. And that's what our life has been. So we did 5 years in New York on mission with the Jets, and a year in Cleveland on mission with the Browns, and 4 years here going into our 5th season with the Saints. And, it's just been an incredible journey, just, seeing all that God has done through us, through our platform. And it's just something that we live by: to whom much is given, much is required. And that's what I think a lot of people end up seeing is the spinoff of the platform, right? There's a certain stereotype and anticipation of what athletes are and what they do.
Right.
And we get to be the anomaly of that simply because we're on fire for Jesus, and we live that out in a real way. It's not like we're just going around with our Bibles out saying, here's Jesus. We love individuals in a strong and real way. And that's what I've been able to see.
Yeah, what's interesting, it's a good segue here, because that's what really drew me to you. My business and my background is interesting, and I've had the good favor to meet a lot of interesting people. But what I saw in you and heard from you when we met early on is a real sincerity and a devotion, not just in talk, right? I've mentioned this to you before. There's a lot of touchdown Jesus followers in the NFL, right? Or big play Jesus followers. But you live on the field of faith as much or more than you do on the field in the NFL. And that's what really drew me to you. Let's talk a little bit about something strikes me here in this story that I really identify with, because I grew up as an athlete, was always a small guy on the field, but worked to get noticed and worked hard, but grew up in a home where it's just my mom and my grandma, interestingly, who was like my second mom, loving me and raising me and introducing me to the faith story. But as I was growing older and grew up in the church without a father, it was men, particularly really good athletes in the church. Some had been former baseball players, other guys, just really good high school and college stars, but were really involved in baseball and softball leagues in our church. Brought me along, and I played the infield and did well. But these guys walked through life with me for years in the context of sport and showed me real leadership and an authentic faith. And that's really what drew me to a life of faith. So, I see that same thing, hear that same thing in your story. Let's talk a little bit about, and I know it's central to what you're doing off the field and on the field, the role of leadership seems to me to be crucial for those of us who are trying to live our faith authentically, but also leadership's critical to modeling for a culture that's awash in everything that's antithetical to leadership. It's all about me. It's all about my rights. It's all about what I want. It's all about what I feel. Talk to me about how your understanding and appreciation for leadership has developed and what you're doing with that now.
Yeah, it's the motto I live by: servant leadership, right? This thing that God has given me is this ability to lead in any situation. Even when I was a kid, I used to talk to my mom about, hey, I want to be a leader. I'm fascinated with lions, the king of the jungle. So just leadership aura is what kind of my mind thinks about. I love people like John Maxwell, who teaches a lot of leadership principles. So I'm just always just trying to find ways to lead better. But the greatest thing that I've ever heard is servant leadership is really what, right? And it's understanding that any environment that you go in, you're leading with people, and you're there to make that environment better, right? You're not there to change the environment. You're not there to bring in your sauce or your pizzazz or take it. It's whatever environment you're in, you're there to make it better. It's a picture of Kool-Aid. Leaders are sugar, right? Nobody is interested in just sugar water, right? It's there to make the Kool-Aid taste better. So you put the Kool-Aid packs in, then you add the sugar, and all of a sudden the Kool-Aid tastes better, right? That's leadership. You come alongside the Kool-Aid and you make it better. And nobody's going in just to drink the sugar. It's not. So without the Kool-Aid, you're nothing, right? And that's what you learn to understand is, as a servant leader, without whoever it is that I'm serving or whoever it is that I'm guiding or helping to make better, without them, it doesn't exist. So that takes the pride that I know what's best, and that, I am the greatest gift to this environment. It's all that out, right? I'm here to make whatever you have better. So that's in a corporation, that's inside a foundation, that's inside of a football team, that's inside of on a committee or a board, that I'm here to help make this better, right? And then how can I serve the individuals that are here in ways that they didn't realize they need to be served, or ways that they're looking for or being guided? Maybe there's a disconnect, maybe there's a gap that needs filling. And so it's being able to listen, learn, and then do that. And so what that looks like is different, right? It's different inside of a locker room with men, and it's different working with 12 to 18-year-old young men. So out of a locker room, with men, it's a lot about respect, right? And a lot of respect comes from things that are unspoken. It's things that are felt. Like, men are really good to know if you're being real or if you're being fake. Like if it's authentic, they're going to pick it up. And so, like, I can't come in speaking or yelling or presenting myself to be a certain thing. It has to be something that's felt. It has to be real. It has to be. So what I've learned in that is being relational, getting to know guys in a spot where it's all about alpha and conquering, and just like, hey man, I just want to get to know you. I want to know you like a friend, because guys have a little bit of tough time confiding. But once they know that somebody's going to be transparent and will be open and vulnerable with them, like, the greatest thing I do when I'm having man-to-man conversations is be vulnerable and tell the
Yeah.
truth. About
Yeah,
things I'm struggling.
leadership. Yeah, leadership without relationship, it just becomes a product.
Yeah.
Anybody can quote the leadership buzzwords, right? But without relationship, you're not really leading anybody. Just giving them slogans.
Exactly. And once I have that relationship, then it's, I understand this individual, so I can talk to him. And, like a coach will come to me and he'll be like, what's the temperature of the locker room? The coach coaches the team too. He's around the team just as much. But what is it? Is because I know the guys. I can talk to them individually. Like what I say to one guy isn't going to be the same thing I say to another guy.
Yeah.
And the message that need to be communicated at that point, they can trust me with the message to take to all those guys because I've taken the time to build the relationships.
Yeah.
Right. And I laid out an example. The things I talk about, I also back up with my actions. So the guys know not only am I relational, that they can trust me.
Yeah.
Everything that he comes out his mouth, he's going to deliver on. So when I say, it's real. And that's a lot different than dealing with 18-year-old men, 12 to 18-year-old men, young men. What they need is almost, it's relational, but it's a different type of relationship.
Yeah.
That relationship is more like, I need somebody that I can count on or depend on, right? That figure role, because most of them, when we're at, they don't have a father. And so giving them something that's constant and real, right, doesn't require me to necessarily give them messages, even though there is a lot of guiding that goes on, but they just need the constant, right? They need their trust is not that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, but I'm going to be there. Are you going to be there when I need you? When something happens and the phone hits the fan, are you be there? And then once you give them that, now you have an open dialogue with them to guide them. And the main thing that you need to guide them in is to give them affirmation.
Yeah.
Young men need to hear from men what it means to be a man and to say, hey, you're no longer a young man, you are a man. You're carrying out the actions of a man and I'm proud of you. And so seeing those dynamics, it's just, I'm being the sugar in every environment. I'm just being the sugar. I'm not coming in with an agenda. I'm looking to say, assessing, okay, what is the need here? And how can I help? How can I serve this situation? And glory be to God that he used the Holy Spirit to guide me in all those settings.
And I guess your primary activity there outside of the team, where your leadership servanthood is at work, is with Devoted Dreamers, right? So I want you to talk about that in this segment and some in the next. But it strikes me, in that age group, these are kids like all of us. They're like you've already talked about yourself going through that phase. We bring a lot of self-induced trouble and struggle, and we're trying to figure it out. And so a lot of that involves some amount of suffering as we're trying to figure life out. And for me, one of the greatest areas of leadership authenticity I've been drawn to is leaders who are willing to share their own suffering and even embrace that sort of Jeremiah prototype. Jeremiah was known as the suffering servant or the suffering prophet, right? And yet was called to be a leader. And I've found, and I'd like to hear you talk about this a little bit as you deal with that demographic. I found that being able to understand people's suffering and share my own and walk with people with a great deal of empathy helps connect, especially with that age group where you're doing your work with Devoted Dreamers.
Yeah, well, when you really look at the landscape of what of young people in general, especially young people in underserved communities, there's limited exposure. And so looking at this situation and saying, okay, what is the greatest need is exposure. And what happens as a result of limited exposure, right? There's two questions essentially being asked by young people, or what they are evaluating when they look at the world is, how can I be of value? And how can I be seen? Right? I want to be rich. I want to be famous. be of value and how can I be seen? And so what they start to look for is, I want to make money and I want to be seen. And so in the context of growing up in those communities, as I'm a product of that community, kind of the three areas that they identify as success is I want to be a rapper, I want to be a ball player, I want to be a trapper, deal drugs.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Because there's value and they seen. You see the drug lords or the trap kings riding up and down the streets in these fancy cars, and everywhere you go, they're kind of the standout individual. They got on all the nice clothes. So I want to be, or I want to be a ball player, right? They make a lot of money and they're on TV, right? Or I want to be, they make a lot of money or seem to make a lot of money and they're on TV and they're performing. So that's what they're chasing, right? With limited exposure. And unless we put things in front of them, right? Everybody says there's always a cliche of, oh, you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be a president. That's what everybody kind of like, but they don't see doctors. They don't see lawyers.
Right.
They hear these things and they have no idea of what their value is, right? There's no exposure to, what their lifestyle looks like. So they kind of block them out. So unless we put them in an environment where they're getting exposure, which is the program that we do, we try to expose them to all these different careers, bringing these careers to them so that they can see. And now what they're able to do is see someone of value that has value and is confident in their value. And they also they know that these people are being seen, right? When they tell them about their clients and they tell them about all the places that they get to go and all this. And so unless you introduce them to they're exposed, and then now they can look at it and say, you know what? Those other things I don't necessarily want to do, but I like this and I want to do this. And then it gives them a pursuit. Yeah. And so that's what we try to do with our young people is give them exposure. And you can give them all the guidance that you want to give them. But if they don't have a vision towards something that they're looking towards, if they don't have a pathway to get to those resources and the willpower to work, meaning the desire themselves to work towards that and the support around them to get there, they're going to end up failing.
It's a great perspective because as I said at the beginning, and I think our viewers are beginning to understand what I meant, there's a lot of depth of thought goes into that. As you said, what you hear time and again in the setting you grew up in and underserved communities is that, this is our way out. And they're always referencing sport, or they're always referencing some form of entertainment. That's our only way out. And that's a shame, right? Because the human condition, the sense of belonging, the sense of respect, the sense of dignity is so much bigger than sport or entertainment, right? And too often those things actually disfigure the image of what thriving humanity is supposed to look like. Thankfully, there's guys like you that are in those high profile places that show, what it can be. So on the other side of the break, let's talk more about what exactly Demario Davis and Devoted Dreamers and some of the other things that you're doing are. What are the components? What are the features? And then we're gonna go deep, and we're gonna tackle some things that a lot of folks don't like to talk about because we live in a contentious world. But we're gonna dive deep into things like race and the political rancor and some of those things. So this is Recast with Demario Davis, sponsored today by BruceLeeSmith.com and WealthCurated.com. And we'll see you on the other side of the break.